It wasn't a headline. It wasn't a scandal. It was just a laugh. Not the kind that fills a room or tries to steal attention. This was smaller, sharper, and somehow far louder than words. Kern Lima didn't clap back, didn't launch into a defense, and didn't even bother with the polite smile people use to diffuse awkward moments. She just let out a dry, almost effortless laugh. And in that instant, it landed harder than any public statement Meghan Markle could have prepared. Because here's the thing, it wasn't mean, it wasn't mocking, but it was loaded. It carried the weight of someone who's seen the game played over and over, knows every move, and has no patience left for it. In a world where Meghan's image has been carefully polished, scripted, and protected, this one unscripted sound felt like it cracked the glass. And the question everyone was left asking was the same. What exactly did that laugh mean? And why did it seem to say so much? It should have been safe territory for Meghan, a friendly podcast, an empowering conversation, two women talking about success and struggle. But this wasn't her podcast. For the first time, she was stepping into someone else's space, without the comfort of her own production team, pre-approved questions, or carefully curated sound bites. No control over the final edit, no guarantee the narrative would go her way. From the start, there was an undercurrent, a subtle tension you could almost feel through the headphones. And then Meghan made her move, a light jab dressed up as casual banter, calling Jamie a user and a hypocrite. In most interviews, that kind of comment would spark awkward laughter or quick topic changes. But Jamie didn't flinch. She didn't defend. She didn't even give Meghan the satisfaction of a reaction that could be spun later. Instead, she smirked, a slow, knowing expression, and then came that laugh, short, dry, effortless, the kind of laugh that doesn't just dismiss a comment, it disarms it. In that moment, the entire dynamic shifted. Meghan wasn't steering the conversation anymore. Jamie was. And without raising her voice, without getting personal, she made it clear she wasn't here to play along with anyone's script. To understand why that laugh hit so hard, you have to know who Kern Lima really is. She's not someone who stumbled into the spotlight by accident or married into it by chance. She's self-made in the purest sense of the word, a former Denny's waitress who went on to build a billion-dollar beauty empire from the ground up. Her brand, IT Cosmetics, wasn't born out of glossy marketing plans or celebrity endorsements. It was built on the kind of grit that comes from being told no so many times you start to lose count. Jamie pitched her products to investors who didn't believe in her. She was rejected by beauty executives who said her look wouldn't sell. And she pushed back, not with spin or carefully packaged vulnerability, but with proof. One of her most famous moments came on live television, when she wiped off all her makeup in front of millions of viewers. No filters, no edits, just her real skin, redness, rosacea, and all. It wasn't a stunt. It was her way of showing women that beauty didn't have to hide behind perfection. That single act became the cornerstone of her brand's authenticity and eventually led to a $1.2 billion sale to L'Oreal in 2016. So when Meghan tried to paint her as a hypocrite, it wasn't just inaccurate, it was almost laughable. Jamie doesn't need clout from Meghan Markle. She doesn't trade in victimhood or PR-engineered empowerment. She built her influence on substance, not spectacle, and that's exactly why her reaction on that podcast carried so much weight. For years, Meghan's image was her strongest asset, polished, purposeful, and perfectly positioned to capture headlines. But somewhere along the way, the shine started to wear thin. What was once seen as bold and disruptive now feels like a familiar cycle, a heartfelt story, a rallying cry for empowerment, a claim of injustice. And then, inevitably, a return to the role of the misunderstood victim. It's not that her experiences aren't real or her causes unworthy. It's that the delivery has begun to feel rehearsed. Every public moment seems filtered through a lens of self protection, where criticism is labeled as prejudice and every setback becomes a morality tale. At first, that approach built sympathy and loyalty. Now, it's breeding fatigue. Inside Hollywood, that fatigue is turning into something worse: hesitation. Executives talk about creative delays, chaotic decision making, and press narratives that shift faster than the projects themselves. Meetings feel heavy before they even start. It's not that people doubt Meghan's potential, it's that they no longer trust the follow through. And that's why Jamie's laugh landed like it did. It wasn't just about a single podcast moment, it was the sound of someone cutting through the performance, someone who's lived empowerment without turning it into a storyline. In that instant, the contrast between Meghan's curated narrative and Jamie's lived reality became impossible to ignore. Empowerment, when it's real, doesn't need to be announced. It doesn't need perfect lighting or a scripted delivery. It's visible in the way someone carries themselves, the choices they make, and how they treat people when there's nothing to gain. That's what Jamie Kern Lima brought into that room: a quiet confidence built on years of rejection, risk, and resilience. Meghan's version of empowerment feels different. It often circles back to her pain, her battles, her transformation. Even when she's speaking on larger issues, the story somehow becomes personal again. It's not that she shouldn't share her truth, but when every lesson points back to her own experience, it starts to feel less like collective empowerment and more like personal validation. Jamie's laugh wasn't cruel. It wasn't dismissing struggle. It was rejecting the performance of it. She's lived through her own challenges without needing to package them for approval. She doesn't lead with the wounds. She leads with what she built in spite of them. And that kind of credibility can't be faked. You either have it or you don't. In that brief moment, listeners didn't just hear a difference in personality. They heard the difference between a story that evolves and one that keeps playing the same scene over and over. And once you notice that gap, it's hard to unsee. Hollywood moves fast, but its memory is long. When the excitement around a name starts to fade, it rarely comes back the same way. And for Meghan, the shift has been happening quietly, but steadily. The calls aren't as frequent. The invitations feel more obligatory than enthusiastic. The partnerships that once seemed like open doors are now guarded by polite declines. It started with the big public breakups: the royal family, Spotify, Netflix, but those were just the visible cracks. Behind the scenes, producers and executives began noticing the patterns: projects slowed by indecision, creative meetings tangled in brand control, and collaborations overshadowed by press management. Even allies began keeping their distance, not out of animosity, but out of exhaustion. In that same industry, Jamie Kern Lima feels like the opposite. No entourage, no crisis PR team hovering in the wings, no unpredictable headlines following her into the room. She brings stability, a quality that's become rare and therefore valuable. Where Meghan's presence has begun to make meetings feel cautious, Jamie's makes them feel straightforward. It's not about fame versus anonymity, it's about trust. And in an environment where time, energy, and reputation are currency, people will always choose the person who delivers without the drama. That laugh wasn't just a reaction, it was a reflection. In a split second, Jamie Kern Lima held up a mirror that showed Meghan Markle exactly how the room saw her. Not the brand, not the carefully curated public image, the real perception, stripped of PR filters. And that's why it stung. Because in that moment, Meghan wasn't in control of the narrative. She couldn't spin it into a redemption arc or fold it into a broader message about injustice. Jamie's laugh made it clear. Not everyone was buying the performance anymore. It also revealed something deeper, that Hollywood, the same industry Meghan has been trying to fully claim as her own, values stability over spectacle. Executives, producers, and collaborators may tolerate chaos when the payoff is huge, but when the unpredictability becomes the brand, the risk starts outweighing the reward. Jamie, without saying a single word, embodied the alternative. Consistent, grounded, self made, someone whose reputation doesn't need defending because her track record already speaks for her. In that split second contrast, Meghan's brand looked overworked and overmanaged, while Jamie's looked effortless. The irony? Meghan has spent years calling herself a disruptor, but in that room, it was Jamie who disrupted the script, simply by not playing along. Meghan can still change the narrative. Reinvention is possible, but it requires something she hasn't fully shown yet: honesty, real humility, the courage to step out of the spotlight long enough to drop the act, to let the world see her without the filters, the curated moments, the protective scripts. Until that happens, the disconnect between her image and reality will keep growing. Meanwhile, Jamie Kern Lima stands as a quiet reminder of what true influence looks like. She doesn't need a stage, a storyline, or a headline to prove her power. She embodies the promise Meghan once made: authentic empowerment, lived in the world, not packaged for it. No production, no performance, just results, resilience, and credibility. And the lesson lingers long after the podcast ends. Sometimes the smallest reactions, a laugh, a glance, a pause, reveal the biggest truths. The moments you almost overlook are often the ones that hit the hardest.